The Pittsburgh Pirates walked off the San Francisco Giants in dramatic fashion on Tuesday night and got contributions everywhere, which is needed moving forward.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every single day. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of this wonderful show here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And last night, folks, I'm sure there was a lot of you that probably turned the TV off going into the ninth inning. The Pirates were trailing 6-2 to the San Francisco Giants going into their final 3 outs of the game. And folks, things got very, very interesting very quickly for the Pittsburgh Pirates in that bottom of the ninth inning. They managed to put up 4 runs to tie the game and make it a tie game going to extra innings. Obviously, winning the game thanks to Nick Gonzales and an RBI single to kick off the bottom of the 10th inning. And the Pirates managed a massive comeback and now have the exact same record as the San Francisco Giants, the team that they are currently playing to begin this 6-game homestand. And I think my biggest takeaway that I had from this game last night, and a lot of people would probably say, Ethan, this is your biggest takeaway, is that the Pirates got contributions last night from just about everybody that they could possibly get contributions from, which I thought was a big, big, big deal for them. And by the way, the cat's knocking things over. She's so excited about the walk-off yesterday, too. She's knocking everything over this morning. And the biggest thing that I saw, one, was the resiliency of this team, something that even a couple weeks ago, a lot of us, I think, were starting to kind of see it tail off a little bit. We were starting to see the Pirates kind of lose their way. They weren't really fighting back in the ball games. When they started to trail in a ball game, it felt like that game was over. It just felt like they weren't even interested in coming back to win games, especially with the way that the offense was playing. Now you're starting to see them kind of fight back into games a little bit again. You're starting to see them claw back into these games and make them interesting, and that's exactly what they did last night. Now, what I found even more impressive was that they did this against Camilo Doval, who is one of the better closers in all of baseball, and his last blown save was September of last season. So very good start for him this year, and one of those guys it's very tough to beat, especially in those scenarios, in those save scenarios for him. And one thing that I did find interesting about Doval and his approach, though, is, yes, he's a guy that could throw 100 miles per hour, but he does get wild at times. And you kind of saw that the Pirates take advantage of that late in the game. I mean, you look at some things that started off the bottom of the ninth. Ji-hwan Bae, obviously with the big hit to keep the game going, obviously came up yesterday, was slotted right into the lineup, made an instant impact on the game, made it 6-3. And then really where the tide changed, I think, in that game last night, and I know a lot of people will probably not credit it to this, but you definitely should, was the error from Marco Luciano on the Andrew McCutchen double play. Now, obviously, Kutch could have probably beat that out, but that also would have just changed the entire scope of the game, because on the very next at-bat, Brian Reynolds grounded it right back to Marco Luciano, and that really would have ended the game at that point. Reynolds was able to beat it out, keep the game alive at 6-5. Obviously, Oneil Cruz, who we'll talk a lot more about later, being a Statcast menace right now, had that ripped double that tied the game. Gonzales, again, obviously winning it in the bottom of the 10th. And you just got contributions from everywhere. You take a look just at the general box score of that game, and I know sometimes hearing box score stats isn't all that great, but you really go and look at it for this one, and it's interesting because you got 2 hits from Kutch, including an RBI. Reynolds did not have a hit on the evening. He was 0 for 5 on the day, but still managed to get 2 RBIs. Now, that's something that normally you'd say, oh, he just had an 0 for 5 day. Well, he managed to still put up 2 runs on the board for his squad. Oneil Cruz, phenomenal day. 3 for 5 with an RBI, only 1 strikeout. Connor Joe was 1 for 5 on the day. Michael A. Taylor was just a pinch runner, obviously was the winning runner on the RBI single. Nick Gonzales, who has had a very good run of things so far. We'll get into that a little bit more later in this show too. 2 for 5 on the day with 1 RBI. Even Jack Sawinski was 1 for 3, had a walk, had a hit. Yasmani Grandal, we're going to monitor what's going on with that groin with Yasmani Grandal because he did have groin discomfort that was announced after the game. He was 1 for 4. Jared Triolo did not have a hit on the day, but did have a walk, did have an RBI. Ji-hwan Bae padded the stat sheet in his 2024 debut. 2 runs, 1 hit, 1 RBI, had a stolen base in there, had a walk on there. He's adding a dynamic that the Pirates have been missing so far this year. They have not been a plus base stealing team. I mean, I haven't checked the stats on it, but I'm sure that Elly De La Cruz probably has more stolen bases than the entire Pirates roster right now, which Elly's on a crazy pace in terms of his stolen bases right now. But the Pirates had more hits last night than they had strikeouts. They had 11 hits to 9 Ks, got on base via the free pass 3 times, and that's really what you look for. Take advantage when the advantages and the opportunities are placed right in front of you. And that's exactly what the Pirates did last night. They found a way, down 6-2, really not showing any sort of life offensively. Logan Webb had a phenomenal day for the San Francisco Giants. 6 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, 6 strikeouts. But before that 9th inning, they hadn't scored a run since the 5th. And that was a pretty big deal for the Pirates up to that point. Now, when it got around to this, it was 6-2. It kind of felt like the game was out of reach. It felt like it was just going to be another one of those, simple games where the Pirates just got outplayed. But the fact that they were able to come back in this game, and not only come back, but get contributions from the guys that you want to get contributions from. You got a very good game from Nick Gonzales, who I think is going to continue to play good baseball because of the adjustments that he's been able to make. Ji-hwan Bae came up for his first game and made an instant impact. That is exactly what you want when you are calling guys up from AAA, which the Pirates have done that now 3 times. They've done that now 3 times where they've had a guy come up and make an instant impact, that being Paul Skeens, Ji-hwan Bae, and Nick Gonzales. We all remember Nick Gonzales on Paul Skeens' day having that 2 RBI single to really get the scoring kicked off. Or that was on Friday, when he debuted in the Jared Jones start against the Chicago Cubs. Either way, this is what a team like the Pittsburgh Pirates has to do. You know what I mean? This is something that they have to continue to do. They have to get the contributions from the bottom part of the order. They have to get the contributions from the top part of the order. And to really drive that point, last night they had 5 combined hits from their top 3, that being Kutch, Reynolds, and Cruz. And they had 4 combined hits from Nick Gonzales, Jack Sawinski, and Yasmani Grandal. And when you have Ji-hwan Bae in the 9-hole giving you 2 runs, an RBI, a stolen base, and a walk, those are the kind of things that are just going to keep the train rolling. They're going to put up runs on the board. And that's the kind of offense that we expected this team to have. We expected them to get contributions from everywhere, and 1 through 9 not really have any dead spots. Now, we obviously know who the dead spots have been. We spoke about one yesterday in Rowdy Tellez. Jared Triolo has had a rough go of things. Yasmani Grandal has been hot and cold in terms of when he really is on and when he's not. And Jack Sawinski just isn't really figuring it out. But if you can get contributions from those guys, which they have over the past couple of games, and if you want to make an argument here right now, the Pirates could be on a 5-game winning streak if Cody Bellinger is called out on Saturday, which, to be fair, the Pirates offense did not contribute in that game by not scoring a run. Pirates have won 4 of their last 5 games. They're playing good baseball right now, which is awesome to see. And when you have a game where Martin Perez, who right now is your worst starting pitcher and had an okay day, 4 1/3, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 3 walks, and 4 Ks, another not so great start from Perez. But when you have that kind of start from your starter, and you still managed to win the game. Credit to the bullpen, by the way, especially Luis Ortiz, who had a pretty solid day as well. That is going to help you, especially when you have Jared Jones and Paul Skeens going in the next two games against the San Francisco Giants, and you have to like their odds to win those games. Now, we'll talk about the Game 2 preview in the final segment of today's show, and, of course, talking Skeens tomorrow. But it's interesting because despite a game where your starter doesn't play well, despite a game where you were down 6-2 going into the bottom of the ninth, in the final frame, it looks like it's over. Pirates managed to come back and win this game. These are the type of games, folks, especially with where the Pirates are in the standings. Yes, I know we're talking standings, but it's almost Memorial Day. You can start looking at those things now. They are smack dab in the middle of all of those teams that I would consider wild card contenders in the National League and are facing one right now. If you can win games like that and find ways to just put a W in your record column, folks, you're going to be better off more often than not. And now, the next 2 days, they have the pitching advantage. Flat out, they have the pitching advantage with Jared Jones and Paul Skeens on the bump, which we'll talk about later. But we're going to talk about the impacts that Nick Gonzales and now Ji-hwan Bae have had on this team, and also Oneil Cruz being a Statcast menace right after this. Folks, today's episode of Locked On Pirates is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100 because Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. All you do is just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch your winnings roll in. We all love baseball here. So if you want to win some money or think you know what's going on, folks, you could bet the over on Jared Jones strikeouts tonight against the San Francisco Giants. You could bet the over on Oneil Cruz RBIs. You could bet the over or under on first inning runs. All you have to do is take your pick of more or less and add them to your Prize Picks entry today. And you can even win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks if you're feeling good about your selections. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download Prize Picks and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. All you do is pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks. And folks, welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. Don't forget to check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, free and available to you 24/7 on YouTube and the Amazon Fire TV app. Local hosts of Locked On like myself, covering everything going on in the sports world. Right now, of course, you got Celtics, Pacers in the Eastern Conference, Timberwolves and Mavericks in the Western Conference. You even have the NHL playoffs going into their conference finals with, I believe it's Edmonton and Dallas and Florida and New York. So lots of fun stuff going on in sports. Baseball is obviously fully underway and getting into the fun parts of the summer. You're going to have NFL training camp coming up and OTAs going on right now. So you're going to be getting a lot more news there. Check out everything Locked On has to offer. Make sure you go to Locked On Steelers, Locked On Penguins, Locked On Pitt to get all of your Pittsburgh fix. Locked On West Virginia, Locked On Penn State. We got everything to take care of your Pennsylvania needs. And right now, 2 guys have come back to the state of Pennsylvania. Those 2 guys being Nick Gonzales and Ji-hwan Bae, who have made some impacts on this team since they came up from AAA, both kind of following the same trajectory so far from what we've seen from them dating back to last season. Ji-hwan Bae and Nick Gonzales, obviously having their struggles last year, didn't really amount to what we expected to see from either of them in 2023. Both of them start in AAA this year, obviously with the influx of middle infield depth coming back because Oneil Cruz is back this year. So he obviously occupies the shortstop spot more often than not. Second base was the spot that was the big talking point in spring training. Jared Triolo was the outright winner of that in spring training, has since not played all that great. So we've kind of seen Nick Gonzales take over that spot a little bit over the last couple of weeks, especially in the absence of Ji-hwan Bae, while Triolo kind of takes over at third. Now you insert Ji-hwan Bae back into the fold, can play center field, can play left field, can play second base if he needs to, adds that defensive versatility that Derek Shelton, Ben Cherington, and the Pirates organization absolutely love so much. So now you add these two guys back into the fold after very strong starts at AAA. Ji-hwan Bae was leading the league in OPS for a good bit. Nick Gonzales was doing phenomenal things. You know, there's a lot going on in AAA that has been good. We've even seen Henry Davis, who on the reverse side of Gonzo and Ji-hwan Bae, be sent down, and he's doing very well in AAA Indianapolis, as I expected him to. I think he just needed to get his confidence back and prove to himself that he could put a bat on a baseball again after a slow start to the year. But these are two guys that, like it or not right now, are contributors to this team in Ji-hwan Bae and Nick Gonzales. And Gonzales, if it were me, and Ke'Bryan Hayes comes back and he's healthy, Nick Gonzales has won that second base spot for now. He flat out has. Now, that's not to say that Jared Triolo and Ji-hwan Bae can't play there in terms of matchups, but, you know, you obviously add a dynamic to all of this where Nick Gonzales can now play that position more often than not if he has to, especially if he keeps batting with a 772 OPS, which has been very good to see from him so far. Those adjustments that he's made at the plate have been very, very good adjustments, and adjustments that he desperately needed, obviously being one of the better hitters in the class in 2021. So then, or 2020, sorry. So then you add Ji-hwan Bae to this mix. And again, I mentioned it earlier, the Pirates have not been a plus base stealing team. You've seen the occasional steal from Jack Sawinski. Oneil Cruz gets on base and usually gets somewhere, but he's been hitting a lot of extra base hits lately, so he hasn't been stealing third. So they haven't been a plus in that department. And you would like to see them be a plus in that department because it would just add another dynamic to this offense that is already a lot of different personalities and a lot of different ways to beat you when they're actually playing well. We've seen this offense at its lowest. We've seen this offense not at its highest, but we've seen it when it can be productive. Ji-hwan Bae, especially if his bat can continue to work, makes this offense more dynamic than we thought it could be. Because then he gets on the base pass and everything changes. And we've even seen the likes of Yasmani Grandal and Alika Williams kind of flirt with sack bunts every now and then. Well, Ji-hwan Bae on a sacrifice bunt might get to first base and kill two birds with one stone. So when you're getting these contributions from guys that, one, you didn't have to give up anything to get these guys on the roster. You just flat out brought them up from the minor leagues after they started playing well. And two, these are not the guys that you're expecting to lead your team. These are guys that are supposed to just contribute as role players and be those guys in the middle, bottom parts of the lineup to keep the train moving to get it back to the top of the lineup. And last night, that's exactly what they did. Now, Oneil Cruz, on the other hand, who just did everything that Statcast wants to love last night. Obviously had the hardest hit ball during the MLB season earlier in the game. And then, of course, on the game-tying double to make it 6-6 in the bottom of the ninth, he broke his own record for the hardest hit ball via Statcast in the MLB this season. Now, if he doesn't hit the ball as hard, they probably win that game in regulation, but it did get to the Clemente wall pretty quickly. But you still have to marvel at what Oneil Cruz is doing right now, because now, after last night, as I mentioned earlier, a 3-for-5 day, 260 batting average, 744 OPS. He had that slow start to the year, but he's finally starting to pick things up. I think he's gaining confidence again in that ankle. Obviously, you break your ankle, you're going to lose some confidence in it every once in a while in terms of your movement. You're going to kind of be scared to make certain movements. Oneil Cruz is just playing relaxed now. He looks like he's just relaxing and, being himself. And I know that might sound stupid to say, but he just looks like he's being Oneil Cruz now. And we saw this in 2022 when he first debuted, that he was going to hit the baseball hard. He could put it at all parts of the field. He's actually done that quite a bit this year with some of that opposite field play that we've seen from him. But he's up to 7 home runs and 19 ribbies now and 4 stolen bases. I said that Oneil Cruz could be a 20 to 25 home run guy. Now, is he going to get the stolen bases? Probably not. But when you're batting in the 740s, 750s in OPS, and the average right now is way higher than I thought it would be for Cruz. He's batting 260, and you go through his last 15 games, and he's slugging 633 over his past 15 games with 4 homers and 11 RBIs and 60 at-bats. Oneil Cruz, unlike Nick Gonzales and Ji-hwan Bae, is going to be the guy that is going to ultimately lead this offense more often than not. Hence why he's usually in the 3 or the 4 hole. That's what he's there for. Now, I would like to see, and we saw this last night, that Connor Joe was behind Oneil Cruz in the lineup. I would kind of like that to be flipped, because I do like what Connor Joe has also brought this offense. Still the OPS leader on the offense at an 811 with a 277 batting average. He's had a great year, has been a phenomenal player for this offense, and arguably their most consistent offensive player. When you put Kutch, Reynolds, and Joe in front of Cruz, which is what I would like to see, I think that offers, 1, more RBI opportunities for Cruz, and 2, it allows Cruz to just kind of, see those guys on base and score those guys. And he's good at that. He has been pretty good at that this year. He's hit well with runners in scoring position, especially as of late. And he's making the most of his opportunities, and he's been very clutch as of late too, using that power that I mentioned to put the ball especially to right field and right center field. But, folks, you look at what he's been able to do, especially, again, as I mentioned, with runners in scoring position, 227 average right now, but it was much worse than that a couple of weeks ago. And he's just been very good earlier in games, too. I mean, second inning, 278, third inning, 273, fourth inning, 353, fifth inning, 318. He's batting with a 786 OPS in the ninth inning, though. And he needs to continue to bat third or fourth. I've said that. And I don't think that's going to really change much anymore. He has an over 1,000 OPS when he's batting fourth and 838 OPS when he's batting third. So starting to see Oneil Cruz become that player that we all expected him to be. And that shouldn't come as much of a surprise. Statcast obviously loves Oneil Cruz, as it should. He's that kind of guy that is just going to offer Statcast pretty much every single advanced metric that they can look at when it comes to hitting. And that's what he's been doing. And the Pirates last night, again, Oneil Cruz contributed as you want him to. You got contributions from Nick Gonzales and Ji-hwan Bae and some of the other role players on the team. And look what happened. You ended up having a dramatic comeback. Can the Pirates win the series tonight against Blake Snell and the San Francisco Giants? We'll discuss in a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Pirates is brought to you by eBay Motors. Millions of parts for your MVP, and you can win every time with parts that fit your ride. Passion, drive, and patience are the formula for winning championships and also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, probably the best part of eBay Motors, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. And folks, welcome back to the final segment of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. And your Pittsburgh Pirates will look for a second consecutive series victory, this time against the San Francisco Giants. They won 3 of 4 over the weekend versus Wrigley. They win this one last night against the San Francisco Giants. They now have the pitching advantage in these next two games, and that starts with Jared Jones, who had a very good start in Wrigley Field the last time he pitched. ERA sits at a 2.89. The whip is still below a 1 at a 0.91. 63 strikeouts over 53 innings. Has not given up more than 3 earned runs in his last 3 starts. And truthfully, I don't think he's given up more than that in really any start that he's had this year. He is not. He's not given up more than 3 earned runs in any given start. Comes into this start against the San Francisco Giants with a 2.37 ERA in the month of May in those 3 starts. He's obviously went 6 innings or more in all of those starts. What is a little bit concerning, he did give up 7 hits in each of his last 2 starts. Obviously, May 10th against the Cubs, May 16th against the Cubs, so he'll have a chance to face somebody else finally, much like Paul Skeens will say, because Paul Skeens will enter his 3rd start tomorrow afternoon against a new team because he's only faced the Cubs twice. For Jared Jones, I think it's all going to be about just attacking these Giants hitters. This is a Giants offense that has its players. It can do well. These guys have seen Jared Jones already. Jones did pitch against the San Francisco Giants earlier this year. Matt Chapman had 2 at-bats against them with a hit. Taylor Estrada obviously had a home run against Jared Jones in that start. Mike Yastrzemski had a home run against Jones in that start. But Jorge Soler, no hits in that one. Lamont Wade Jr., no hits in that one. Meanwhile, for Blake Snell, this is an interesting matchup because the Pirates do well against left-handed pitchers. Blake Snell not having a good year whatsoever so far. Obviously signed that big deal with the Giants after not signing for quite a bit of time in free agency, becoming a free agent, Cy Young winner, but he's only pitched 3 games this year. ERA above 11 right now at 11.7, 11 and 2/3 innings pitched. The whip almost a 2 at 1.97. This is still Blake Snell. So you never really know when that flip is going to happen for him. But in his only 3 starts this year, he's only went as many as 4 and 2/3 innings pitched. I believe he's also dealt with injuries this year, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, he has. He went on a rehab assignment on May 17th. So he is back. So we'll see what we get from Blake Snell here and see if the injury bug has finally preceded him. But if I'm the Pirates, I attack him early. As I just mentioned, he has not been able to go more than 4 innings in a start this season. He's only had 3, and that ERA is worrisome. And the Pirates have had success against lefties before. I would imagine that you'll probably see Connor Joe batting high in the order. You'll see Cruz probably slide down to 4. You'll see guys like Edward Olivares be involved. Don't really know if you're going to see a guy like Ji-hwan Bae in this one. You may not. But I would still like to, because I still am of the notion that I want to see the Pirates play the guys that are producing. Ji-hwan Bae is one of those guys that's producing. I know he's played 1 game up here, but he was producing up there or down in Indianapolis. So you want to make sure that these guys stay in the lineup. And it's going to be an interesting one. I mean, both of these teams come in at 23 and 26. The Pirates have a chance to win their 2nd consecutive series. Blake Snell, as mentioned, just not a lot going good for him. 12 strikeouts to 5 walks in those 3 starts. Jared Jones, obviously coming off of an impressive start against the Chicago Cubs, will look to continue his strong rookie season that we've seen from him so far. If you want to bet on this game via FanDuel, the Pirates are the favorite at -123. The run line, is definitely there. The over-under on total runs, 7.5. You can bet the Giants at +106. And Pirates hitters have not faced Blake Snell all that much. Combined 4 for 53 lifetime against Blake Snell. And Jared Jones, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, has allowed 3 runs or fewer in all 9 of his starts this year. So we'll see which pitcher gives their team an advantage tonight against the San Francisco Giants. It will be Giants, Pirates. Pirates looking again for their 2nd consecutive series victory and have the pitching advantage the next 2 days with Jared Jones and Paul Skeens. We'll obviously preview Paul Skeens' third start and his first against the team not named the Chicago Cubs tomorrow, and talk about tonight's game on tomorrow's episode. But folks, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. Follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. Hit the notification bell and the subscribe button on YouTube so you always know when this podcast is coming to you. You can do the same on audio, because it's free and available to you every Monday through Friday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Folks, have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Enjoy the game tonight. See you tomorrow. Till then, see you on the flip side.